Hello, my name's Harry. My talk is about how to make the generation that doesn't care, and that generation is me, and probably quite a few people here as well. Often as well, you'll find that there could be a counter-argument to this. It's not necessarily that we don't care, it might actually be that we just don't see. But there is quite a lot for us to care about these days. Quite a lot of people who pretend to care about a lot of things as well and actually don't, me being one of them. And today I'm going to talk to you about how you can cut through to them and make sure that the thing they do care about is you and your brand. Who am I? So my name's Harry, and yeah, as Joe said, I'm quite young. I'm 21 actually, and probably act about 12. But I'm from Kings Lynn, so not too far from here, and I run Fluential. Fluential is an influencer marketing agency which is luckily supported by a much larger group of agencies who are also very good at what they do. So they've enabled me to pursue this and help people market themselves using influencers. I also make mediocre pop music as well. I know a couple of you have already told me that you've managed to find that. All I can do is apologise. But today I'm here in a professional capacity, would you believe it, despite obviously wearing my t-shirt and trainers, to talk to you about stuff. Influencer marketing. So the only way to really start this is to talk about influencer marketing in a nutshell, because I'm sure you've heard about this quite a lot and probably heard a lot of different things about influencer marketing. It's been in the news quite a lot, not always for the best reasons. There's a lot of shady people involved, a lot of people doing things they perhaps shouldn't. So I'm going to break it down really simple and tell you what it is. Influencer marketing is essentially peer-to-peer recommendations. You'll often hear people make the case that anyone is an influencer. Some of you are influencers because you're influencers to your friends and family. Maybe you've just recommended a hotel that you stayed at and they've gone and stayed at it. It's essentially that principle but amplified. So the greatest influencers are obviously the ones with the strongest connections to their audiences because they're actually able to influence. And there are a lot of people who are kind of acting as influencers almost, who are so far detached now with their millions and millions of followers that, yeah, they might look good holding your product or something like that, but realistically, people aren't actually engaging with their opinions, and it doesn't actually mean a great deal to them. So the way around this that we've found has been integration. So in order for someone to actually have influence, you need to trust their decisions. And whilst you might trust your friend's decision on a hotel or something, if you know that it's something that they don't really know anything about, you're probably not going to trust their decision. So, of course, in turn, if you've got a fitness influencer and they start talking about knitting or something like that, something completely random, you're not going to go and buy those knitting products. Equally, if they're just stood there holding the product like this and forcing a smile maybe like this, great, that's a good smile, isn't it? That'll sell you a few things. And there's some kind of caption as well on Instagram, which realistically, who reads the caption of an Instagram post? It's a visual platform. How well is that going to perform for a brand? It's not going to perform very well because no one's actually paid attention to what you've said about the brand, and no one actually cared about the fact that that influencer's endorsed that product. So when it comes to integration, the first milestone that you've kind of got to achieve is choosing influencers that match the brand that you're trying to promote. But more importantly than that, you've got to make sure that the content actually fits the product. How many times have you watched a movie and there's really cringy product placement and you just think, well, they've paid $1 million to be in that, and it doesn't actually mean anything to you, and you haven't gone home and bought that Samsung laptop. Sorry if anyone from Samsung's here. I don't own a Samsung laptop, surprisingly. And it's just not really meant anything to you. But if you're able to fully integrate the product into the content that the influencer is producing, then suddenly it resonates a little better. It sticks in their mind, the fact that maybe they had to use that to achieve that experience. The only real way that I can talk to you about this, I guess, is to give an example of something we've done. We work for a large insurance company called Adrian Flux. We do a lot of stuff for them, and I'm tasked with making insurance fun with influencers, which is quite tricky. And if I were to get an influencer to post on Twitter saying, all of you guys should ring up Adrian Flux today and get a quote, who is actually going to bother to do that? Absolutely no one. I don't care if they've got 10 million followers or 15 or 20 million followers. Maybe that will generate a few, but who's actually going to bother to do that? No one wants to. Especially with insurance as well, when it's a product that you might not necessarily be ready to buy at that given time. So what we did instead was took a bunch of influencers and got them to drive the UK's biggest monster truck, which sounds a bit bizarre, and it's probably quite hard to tie that into insurance, especially considering they were driving over other cars, which obviously probably insurance companies don't normally want you to do. But the reason why it worked is because of the principle and the integration between what we were trying to sell and what they were doing. So we were trying to sell learner driver insurance. We had people, we're trying to push Adrian Flux to everyone who's learning to drive, so they all coming along to Adrian Flux, picking up the phones and getting a quote. Well, these guys had to learn how to drive a monster truck because most people aren't born knowing how to do it. And it was quite an engaging piece of content to watch. We took people who were usually quite daring within their content, so that instantly matches the kind of theme of what we're going for here. And we made sure that their audience were actually young people from the UK, because that's where they sell to, that's who they're selling to. And suddenly by integrating that, we're able to capture all the data that we need to then push Adrian Flux to and make sure that we actually get results. So that's what we're talking about when we're on about integration. So next time you see a picture of a travel photographer hoovering outside with their Dyson, they're never going to do that really. They've done it because they've been paid 1,500 quid. Micro-influencers and the importance of engagement. This is one of my favourite ones to talk about. The reason being is because some people have deemed that my mediocre pop music is actually enjoyable, and they've decided to listen to it, and I've managed to grow a bit of a following for myself online. Would you believe it? Trust me, I couldn't believe it. So as much as it makes me cringe to say this, I kind of fit myself into this bracket. In a minute, I'm going to walk out there with my head hung in shame, because honestly, I hate describing myself as an influencer, and I hate that this talk has made me, but I've got to for context. Micro-influencers are typically people with those smaller audiences. We can try and categorize them and say 5,000 to 100,000 followers. But realistically, the engagement is what makes them the micro-influencers, the engagement and the communities that they build, because massive, large-scale influencers might be able to partner up with Superdrug and ship out a product in mass quantity, but the micro-influencers are the ones who are in the comments section. They're doing the groundwork, they're replying to the fans of them that are actually inquiring and talking to them, and that's where the trust comes in, and that's where these people are able to build these relationships. When we're looking at influencer marketing campaigns, it's always important to note that no matter how appealing that the big influencer might look, you might want to use Zoella because she's got 15,000 billion subscribers, but realistically, how many of those people actually pay attention? It goes back to that again, the integration. How many of those people trust her and what she's about and what she's promoting? And then how many people of the 5,000 who follow so-and-so on Instagram who only ever talks about similar products to what you're using, how many of those people trust them? And what are they charging as well? And if you were to have a certain amount of those people that equaled a similar following to what Zoella's total gets to or whatever, and chances are you're going to see much better results and you're probably going to spend a lot less money as well. So you're going to make more money and spend less money. And that's why micro-influencers should never be overlooked. If someone has only maybe even 2,000 followers, it's not to say that they're not worth talking to when it comes to your brand. Because the thing is, the chances are, especially with people like this, one of the things that we always think is these influencers, they love brand work. It's a bit of an achievement for them. And I've seen it before. I've seen people with 10,000 followers. They've done a deal with Coca-Cola, and all of a sudden all their friends are congratulating them. Even though it's sponsored content and it's an advert, they're congratulating them because that's amazing. They've only got 10,000 followers. They've worked with Coca-Cola. But that audience, they're a community of people who support this person. They support what they're achieving, and therefore they support their views as well. And it works. It brings in the engagement. They're able to command that audience to click through, to subscribe to something, to do whatever you as a brand want them to do to make sure that they're going to be a customer. And that's why they're so important. I didn't really try and be witty with any of these slides, you probably noticed, but this is one where I tried and completely failed because without the song it's just completely wasted. But as I was talking about, Zoella has umpteen millions of subscribers, and ultimately all it is a vanity metric. And vanity metrics are the one thing that I hate. Likes, comments, shares, all of that rubbish. The reason why I hate it is because when as a board ever sat down and said, well, we've had quite a bad performing month this year. Oh yeah, but we've got 12,000 likes on our latest Instagram post, so we'll be fine. It's never been said because it doesn't matter. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, sure, if you've got a big social and you're pulling in big numbers, you've got a nice engaged audience that you're able to sell to. Those things normally go hand in hand. But we're talking about someone else's content here. We're talking about an influencer who's generating likes on their own posts. Well, what's that benefiting your brand if those people aren't coming through and buying from you or using your service? So the most important thing, I think, to remember with all influencer marketing campaigns, and obviously because of the length of this talk, it's impossible for me to go fully into detail and tell you about all the things that you should be caring about, but I can highlight a few. you need to be looking into how much conversation you're starting around your brand and how far is that going to last after this campaign's finished. Is this campaign going to continue to keep your brand on people's tongues? Are people going to keep talking about it afterwards? What have you captured that you can then use to serve adverts to? Remember that the influencer is spreading awareness of your brand. They are spreading awareness. And these people are going to see your brand, if you get the integration right, in a really nice way. And that's quite a powerful thing, because then whenever they see an advert, they've already got that really good opinion of your brand in their mind. They're going to remember that they discovered you because of this. And that's going to help them. The advocacy the influencer provides is going to help you in all your future marketing efforts. So how are you going to be able to contact them afterwards? Because if they've just liked an influencer's post, you're not going to be able to. Now, it's more than just kind of getting people to follow you, because if people have to follow you to, say, enter a competition, chances are, once they realise they haven't won, they're going to unfollow you again. Capturing data is where it's really at. Emails, things like that. If you can build an email list, you can turn it into a social audience on Facebook, you can capture them with Facebook pixels and all of that, then you can have an audience that have already engaged with your brand in a really nice way. They're going to be much easier to convert into customers later down the line. And one other little nugget that I'll kind of leave you with as well, something that we've been doing a lot of recently, is Facebook Messenger subscriber lists. If you can get influencers to point people through to Facebook Messenger, they'll subscribe really easily, and they're seeing 4 times to 10 times more click-throughs than emails and 80% open rates, which is pretty outstanding, to be honest. Not only that, but how often are people on Facebook Messenger? They're using it to contact. If you're able to cut through there, and cut through because they've allowed you to, then you're in a really powerful position. Looking ahead. So at the start of this talk, I mentioned that some of you might have heard of influencers in the news recently for bad reasons, fake influencers, and people just reporting vanity metrics back and saying, you got 2 million likes and a billion comments, but we haven't made you a penny. That is happening, and it's always going to happen in the influencer marketing world for as long as brands continue to work with agencies that fulfill to those kind of KPIs. And there's always going to be influencers who are buying followers, because there's always going to be services that allow you to buy followers. And the only real advice I can give to anyone who's looking to stay away from that is to invest yourself. These influencers are invested in what they're doing, and their audience are invested in what they're doing. So the only way that you can fully understand them is to observe how well they're performing on a daily basis, looking at their normal posts, looking at their sponsored posts. You could take the average of likes that someone's got in their past 6 posts, but ultimately they might be annoying people when they've worked with brands because they've done it so often, and therefore you're not going to get 1,000 likes, you're going to get maybe 500, which means you're only going to convert maybe a couple of people instead of a few hundred. It's all these types of things that you need to consider. But in terms of influencer content and where it's going, I think static posts are just going to fade away. And I really hope they do, because they are boring. You see someone just holding a product, it's not fun to look at. You don't want that on your Instagram. People are going to be unfollowing the influencers that are doing it, and it's going to turn them off to the brands that are getting them to do it. If you really want to succeed with influencer marketing, you need to take it back to what it is, and it's content. You need to think about what is going to be the best content I can do, and find a way to pair that with your influencer. Use them to push it out and to make sure that people are going to take the action you want them to take, but don't just think it's enough to give them a piece of your product and let them do it. Make sure that you have got something that people will want to see and that people will be talking about long after they've seen it. I'll probably whiz through this again. I think last time I had about 15 minutes and was probably done in about 3. I tend to talk quite fast, but I hope you have enjoyed it. I'll just say a big thank you, especially to Joe for having me back again. I spoke at a Norwich one earlier in the year, and it was fantastic. These events really are great. I'm going to be hanging around, so if anyone wants to talk to me, I know I've got questions in a minute, but if I don't answer anything that you want answered after, then please do come up and talk to me. Also, I forgot all my business cards at home, so I've got a nice little slide here of my info. So if anyone wants to contact me after, this is the way. But thank you very much for having me. My name's been Harry. And I look forward to meeting you in a minute.